Welcome to Stay Sparked. On this show, we explore how to stay inspired in the modern world through the most profound lessons from Burning Man, relationships, entrepreneurship, psychedelics, spirituality, travel, and more. On today's episode, we talk about Framily, friends and family.
We talk about the different ways that we have to let go of expectations to have the relationships and the connections that nourish us.
And we discuss our own personal journeys with cultivating friends and family in our own lives and how we can get those connections to empower and enlighten us.
Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Stay Sparked. We are three longtime friends who have been sharing deep conversations for over a decade. Now we are coming together to share those conversations with you. If you are enjoying the conversations, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It has been so wonderful to be hearing that people have been sharing. It has been one of their top podcasts of 2023. Please leave us a review so that we can read it here on the air. I am Halcyon.
And I'm Betsy.
And I am JANUS.
We always like to start our broadcast with a little bit of gratitude. So, JANUS, what are you grateful for today?
Well, I'm grateful for so much, but certainly at the top of the list, I believe since our last recording, we have a new baby boy who has arrived on November 11th, 11/11 baby. His name is Rumi, and he's 3 weeks old, and it's been great. He's it's been quite the journey with my partner and I, just taking care of a little crazy little being, and so doing the whole parenthood thing, and having a new family moving into 2024. A lot to be grateful for there, so I'm definitely feeling that.
Amazing.
Yay.
I think that may be the best gratitude since the beginning of our show.
Yes, growing family.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Betsy?
Oh, well, I am also going to share my gratitude for my family and specifically my mom. So I got to spend some time with her. We live in different states. And so recently I got some good time with her, and we really had a deep bonding experience, and just love her so much. She is just my biggest gratitude always, just for her light, her perspective, her humbleness, her playfulness, and just big shout out to my mama Deb. Grateful for you, mama.
Oh, so nice. Thank you. And I am going to share my gratitude for my successful colonoscopy yesterday.
All right.
Brag, but I've got a pretty sweet colon, and grateful for the whole process and the medical team and all the friends and my partner for being supportive for the journey. And I encourage everyone to speak to their physician staff and doctors about colon health, especially after you get 45 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm definitely due to have somebody go up there and look around. So,
I will be uploading the footage onto my YouTube channel. No, just kidding.
I was going to say, I'm surprised.
TMI.
Well, so grateful to hear your gratitude, JANUS, about your family, because the topic, inspired by listener Nicole, is about family. And what is family in this modern world, and what is soul family? What is a non-traditional family? How do we relate to family? How can we create the bonds and the networks of community with traditional and non-traditional family? So, Betsy, would you touch a little bit about what that means to you, what family means to you?
Sure. Yes. Beautiful. I love this conversation. So big shout out to Nicole. Thank you for sparking this. Family is such a unique thing these days. I've been in a lot of reflection around how humans have evolved in such a short amount of time. Just a couple of generations ago, more often than now, people were living so much closer together to their families. This day and age, most people I know don't live in the same city as their families. So it feels like families are much more spread out. my personal experience is that, you know, most of my family is in Ohio, so I'm in North Carolina, and I'm in California. And so it is a different type of relating in keeping those family bonds alive and strong than it may have used to be. And then also my perspective around soul family, like you mentioned, is really a huge part of my deep soul need for belonging and connection and community. My community is very much my family. You two here are my brothers. I feel a deep bond with you guys, and so my perspective of family is our human family. The bloodlines that I carry is very special and meaningful. Of course, there's nothing that can come, you know, between us and our bloodlines, but there is something that is on a deep cellular level. I feel that same connection to a lot of people that I don't have the blood connection with, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. I think that there is something about a biological bond, you know, as I'll get a little into it more, but I mean, as I find a difference between a child that is even my friends' kids, my brother's kids, and a child that is my own child, and the different connections to those things. But there's nothing guaranteed that you will feel a powerful connection to someone just because you have a genetic connection to them.
Mhm.
How
A
about
lot of
you?
times it's the opposite, right? It seems
Right.
like a lot of times like there's more distance in the blood. You know, I have a brother who he's my half brother. I love him dearly, but we're very different people, you know, and we don't actually connect on a lot of places, and that's okay. We've come to a place of loving each other from a distance, and we connect, you know, a couple times a year, and that's enough for us, you know, maybe a little bit more. But you know, you guys have a deeper sense of brotherhood in my life, and that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely okay. And that's something that is, I think, universal. But the family structure, our perspective on family is evolved into something that is very new, feels very new here for like American culture and even like Western culture, European culture. I think it was much more common in indigenous cultures to the idea that it takes a village. So you would have a mother and father and brothers, but really the entire village was considered like your family. Like you all really stood up for each other, and you would have your, you know, your aspects that were challenging, like any other family. But I just what I know about so many indigenous cultures around the world is that they viewed each other as brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and, you know, mothers and fathers, what have you, and children. So that is a new concept for us here in the West. It feels like just in the last couple of generations, the idea that our extended friends could actually be considered family. Like these people are like family to me. So it seems like the framing has gone from like, these people are like family to me. They're like, there's no like anymore. It's like these people are family to me. And that's great. That's great. I feel like we're getting back to what is natural, the way we're supposed to be with each other. Although I try not to use the word supposed to too often. So, but yeah, my experience is, you know, similar. Well, kind of in between you guys, I'd say my experience with family was that I was adopted at a very early age. Well, that's just a few days old, frankly. But and they didn't tell us we were adopted until my sister and I, we were both adopted. They didn't tell us until we were 11. But I would be at family functions, Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I would look around at everybody. And our family dynamic was a little odd. All the men were African American, were black, and all the women were German. So that's what I saw growing up as far as adults. And all the kids were like these mixed nuts like me. So I looked like I was related to everybody. But I remember at a very early age looking around, I'm like, something's not right. Something doesn't seem, something's not right. Something's not happening here. And just having that feeling and then being told at 11, like, oh, by the way, you are adopted. And I was like, I knew it. I knew there's something going on. It was an initial shock, but it was like, I knew it. These people are not my family. And then it's like, and you know, just with the drama of family, there was part of me that was like, oh my, thank God I'm not related to these people. There was just like, okay, there's hope. There's hope for me. I've got a future. So, you know, so it speaks to the idea of like, you know, our family. We can feel an obligation to make it work, and to like, well, these are my brother. I'm supposed to like feel something deep and profound for my brothers or my sisters or my mother or my father or my aunts or uncle, whatever. Just because we're blood connected to them, genetically. And yeah, just in the last couple of generations, it seems like we're kind of looking at that again. It's like, no, I'm related to these people, and that's all that means. Like we're taking the meaning we have ascribed away from that, and being like, no, I actually get to be proactive in creating my family and choosing my family. I don't get to choose these people. They're my family, and they're not really, they're not necessarily going anywhere. But I can redefine that relationship, and the close people, I get to choose who these people are. And that's something new, and I think that's great.
Having the biological connection it kind of like gives you a head start, but that's just the beginning. It really, family to me is about people that got your back no matter what, that love you no matter how you turn out, that don't have an attachment to you being a certain way and holding you back and getting too attached. Sometimes the definition of family puts us into these scripts of what we need the other people to be based on what we have expectations of what a sibling or what a parent or what a child should be. And to me, you're the family that you can lean on are the ones that have broken out of those scripts and really foster your ability to be who you truly are. And that can happen really strongly with your biological family. Often not, that doesn't happen. And so often it is the kind of the family like, or the soul family connections where we really feel that belonging that resonates in a way of these people got me no matter what.
Yeah. And the belonging that you're speaking to is something that I have been thinking a lot about since I've been learning and reading about the blue zones. You guys are aware of blue zones on the planet? I think there's about 5 areas on the planet that are considered blue zones. And these are places where there is a greater longevity in living. So there's a higher percentage of centurions. And there's a lot of research done around why are these certain areas promoting more longevity. And one of the reasons that they found is because there is that sense of community and a sense of belonging, and people come together often, and they are doing things together, and they're eating together, and they are being families, whether they are blood related or not. There is a sense of connection and belonging and community. And so like on a very deep cellular level, biological level, that sense of belonging and connection can contribute to longer lifespan, which is just amazing to me, right? Can you imagine? Like if you're in your 80s, 90s and you're still connecting with people, and whereas unfortunately a lot of our culture here in the States is a lot of the elderly people go alone. They're in homes and they sit in these rooms by themselves, and might see, some other old people around, but can be very isolating.
It's another way of viewing the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that kind of, framing that under the guise of family, kind of explains that. I feel like you get more out of life if you're in part of a community, part of a group, part of a family. I think that support, even if it's unspoken, you feel it, and so it just kind of empowers us to thrive a little bit more so. And I feel with how we always kind of take it back around to Burning Man, which is great. And I feel like one thing that Burning Man has done is really kind of put the idea of family like under a microscope, because that's an environment, being out on the playa is an environment where a lot of us get to be and express our authentic selves for often the first time. And when you are really being what feels like your authentic self and you are being celebrated for that, like that's a very empowering feeling. And a lot of us, we're not able to be our authentic selves with our bio family. Some of us get to do that, and others we have to follow a script because there's expectations that get laid upon us. And even if those expectations kind of get lifted as we get older, we still feel it. Our families still know where our buttons are and our triggers are, and that look of disappointment they get when you didn't go to med school like your father and your grandfather and all that. And it's like that stuff can still kind of linger. But You know, the idea of family is for me a place where you are celebrated, where you are supported, and feeling that while expressing your authentic self is not something we always get with biologicals. But if you find that with your soul family, so to speak, I mean, that's like gold right there. So, Halcyon, I was thinking with you, like we talked earlier, and you're somebody that's got a really solid like bio like unit, like a bio family. And I was wondering about how some people tend to like compartmentalize their social groups, but it seems like you're able to like really be your authentic self with your like just out in the world, and that is like supported. So has that always been the case for you, or did you have to feel like you had to create that?
I mean, I feel like I didn't know my authentic self until like late 20s. And then I did have a chapter with my family where they did struggle a little bit with accepting how far out my authentic self was compared to the script that they thought, you know, a son or kid should be.
Yeah, getting comfortable with the idea their son was a cocky bastard.
Yes, and that he was
challenge.
naked on the internet, and that he potentially could embarrass them, and it was kind of like they like, oh man, when we raised a free thinker, we didn't really think this through of what that could mean, you know. But we have, and there honestly there were chapters where looking back, I could absolutely see why it would be difficult to fully embrace the extremes that I was intentionally pushing in culture. I was trying to push buttons. I was trying to confront people's norms and acceptable definitions of how one should be. And so I didn't realize how that's actually a lot easier for me to do than someone who loves me to witness. You know, like my brother was really struggled whenever he would see me get pushback for me, you know, being wild and pink and in the world, where I was like, that's just proof that I am doing my service as, you know, one in, you know, confronting the status quo. And he's like, oh, dude, this is so difficult to hear people say negative things about you. And so I could see how I made it difficult for my parents. Luckily, I softened, they softened. I was able to get to a point where I kind of proved that I was able to take care of myself in a way that my parents could stop worrying about me. And I think that made a huge difference when they could let go of the feeling like our little one is off track. He needs our help. He needs our help. And once they go, oh, we don't understand the path he's on, but he's doing fine. And so clearly people are okay with that in the world. And then that shifted, and we were able to have this mutual respect of understanding that we're following different paths and different kind of baseline realities, but the respect was there. In fact, I had a really significant awareness in my very first ayahuasca experience about, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, something like that. And I used to think that I was so, my parents were so different from me. My dad was so different from me. And then had this awareness that in the medicine that, oh my, he is this very brilliant man, self-confident to the point of a little arrogance. But in his mind, he was a judge, and he saw himself as a servant to the law. He saw himself in a place of service. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm pretty smart. I'm kind of to the point of arrogance at times, but in my mind, I see myself as a servant to God or to love. And so we actually are the very same, we're parallel humans. It just a slight tweak in what we consider to be what we're of service to. And in that moment, totally shifted about what I was able to respect in my parents. And through that respecting them, they were able to then, you know, allow for my whimsy and wackiness. And what's wonderful is that, you know, like my relationship with my parents now as they're aging is is treasured. Like I hang out and I call my parents more frequently than I call any of my friends. But I look to them for guidance. I look to them for comfort. And I know that they, accept me fully, which is, I know is something that not everybody has with their parents. But if you are a parent, you know, and you can try to let go of your expectations and your desires for your kid to the point that you can accept them, there is such a treasure on the other side of that acceptance.
That's huge. Yep, that is really, really beautiful because I actually can really relate because I have some different things coming up because you are very blessed to have such a good relationship with your parents where there's a lot of people out there that wish they could have that kind of relationship. And the way in which I relate is that before my dad passed, we went through a process of sometimes being close and sometimes not. And, one of the biggest things that I realized after he passed was that when I was in a deeper state of acceptance for who he was, despite some of my own personal frustrations around some of his choices and, letting go of some of the resentments that I held, when I went into those places of forgiveness and acceptance within myself for who he is and was, that actually created a deeper bond between us. There was actually more access to communicating, and we could see each other and meet each other more efficiently and effectively. But when it was me trying to get him to be a certain way or make choices differently or just be different, then of course that would push him away and it would make it more difficult for us to connect. And really all I wanted was connection. And so what's brewing for me in this conversation, and for the people out there listening, that might not have those healthy relationships within their family units, how do we find places to love and accept and to forgive and to cultivate, whether that is healthier relationships or healthy distance with our families, because those pain points, the resentments, the grudges, the, holding on to things can really create a lot of dis-ease in the body and literally disease in the body. And so, how do we find healing within our own families? How do we forgive? How do we move forward? How do we find places of peace? And as I'm asking that question, I'll just share a little peek into my own personal journey with creating healthy relationships within my own dynamics. I realized over the last couple of years, my two sisters and I, we love each other dearly, but we all find different ways of communicating that is better for the different dynamics. So my one sister and I, we don't really talk on the phone very much because I don't know, we just don't really always have a lot in common. We might have different perspectives. Sometimes we kind of just hit some edges of our opinions and that sort of thing. And so it was actually really challenging for some time talking on the phone. But we got to a point of actually seeing that text messaging works really well for our connection. So we text about nature, we text pictures of animals, and those are places that we can really meet each other and stay connected and feel the love for one another. Whereas my other sister and I, we actually do really well getting on video calls and talking about our goals, which is like really supportive, really uplifting. But my other sister and I, we would never really talk about our goals. That's not something that we do. It doesn't come natural to us. But my other sister and I, it is like where we thrive. And so I've been finding different ways to connect with different siblings and people in my life to cultivate more connection or balance that feels really aligned and really good. So I'm curious about your guys' thoughts on that, and how do we maintain healthy relations, or any other sparks coming through from that?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I've had a similar process with my bio mom, which I'll get into in a sec. But what we're talking about is, kind of the idea, like a mantra that I think we've all discussed before, but we've all maybe found our ways to it differently. But it's like, let it be easy. Let this connection be easy. What sort of connection with my mom feels easiest for both of us? And so my bio mom, who, like I mentioned before, I was adopted. I met my bio mom when I was like 23. Very surreal story for another time. But we had a friendship connection. We didn't have a mother-son connection because you have to kind of be there for a child's childhood in order to establish that. So we were friends as adults, and it was great. But there definitely got to be a sense. We lived in different states, and so there was this sense of obligation that kind of kicked in. Like I needed to call her on Mother's Day, her birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, things like that. And she felt the same. Like when we would hear from each other was on these significant dates, and that's the only time we would hear from each other, was for about 3 or 4 years. And then finally it was like, we don't have to do this. And I just kind of floated that to her. I'm like, don't feel obligated. Call me when you want to call me. Call me when it feels good, or text. Whatever feels good is what I want you to do. And she was like, that, all right, good. That feels fine. And I asked her, I was like, and I would like you to offer the same to me. And so she was able to do that. And so we got into a flow where it's like we didn't necessarily reach out to each other on Christmas, or she always reached out to me on my birthday, which is lovely. But we got into a flow where we were able to kind of remove the obligation from it, and we eventually actually found our way back into greater communication, and that I wanted to reach out to her on these days. So taking out the expectation and the obligation frees up, I think, the connection to become more authentic, and it feels better when it's authentic. And this, I often said that the only thing that ever upsets or disappoints us are our own expectations, and about how our expectations, like, we expect something to be different. We expect or want things to be better than they are, or just some different than what they are. And once we get rid of that and accept what is, that's a good foundation to build something great and feels, something that feels good on top of that. So that's kind of what came up for me with your process, Betsy. And something I wanted to ask you, and I hope this isn't too much of a deviation from what we're talking about now, but you have recently, really cultivated a really solid connection on the other coast. I mean, we're based here in San Diego, and you've got some really, like, a loving, burgeoning family happening, a really strong sisterhood, it seems, out in North Carolina, in Asheville. So was that just a natural kind of thing, or did you feel like you wanted or needed greater connection, or a broader connection? Like, was there a motivation behind that, or was it just like, oh, let me see what happens? Where were you with that in regards to your community and family and things like that?
Yeah. Natural, so a natural family expansion has been occurring. I have a very strong soul family here in California, you two very much included. Deep roots, deep bonds, many rites of passage and learnings together and adventures together, and we've all grown so much. And a couple of years ago, I went to Asheville for a bit of a life reset. And when I got there, I was going to be there for 3 months. Second day that I got there, I was at a small women's circle. I had one girlfriend who invited me to this women's circle. And at that women's circle, there were 7 of us, and 5 out of the 7 had just moved there. And we created this very strong bond naturally. One of the women there had just moved there also from Encinitas, where I lived. We lived 5 minutes away from each other in California, but never met until we got to Asheville. And so there was like a spark there, and then that started, or like a snowball, and then the bond started to deepen, and the families, just energy started to strengthen. And in the time that I was there, there's been a lot of really beautiful new connections happening that feel very deep and meaningful, and feels like a blossoming garden. And I just want to mention too, there's something that I have been learning about through the gene keys, which, if those of you who are not familiar with the gene keys, it's a really beautiful system that uses the I Ching and human design, that helps us to understand our life purpose and path. It's by Richard Rudd. And one of the things in there that I've read about that really resonates is when we can get into a place of acceptance of all beings. Just, we were talking about that a few minutes ago around accepting our families, feeling accepted by others, then that can actually cultivate deeper connections. And so that's something that has been really important to me, to all of the people that I meet and connect with. I really choose to keep an open heart and accept people for who they are, love them for who they are, reduce the judgment about other people being different, or just, that's a natural part of our human experience, is to judge others, but to love others before judging, right? Or negatively judging, because the judgment is helpful for our ego, but to come from that place of love, then naturally the bonds are stronger. And that's what I'm really noticing, is like, I feel like I have had some very, very, very deep bonds with a lot of people in a short amount of time, that really creates this strong network of soul family. So I hope,
Yeah.
does that clarify a bit?
That makes so much sense. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it can be easier to build really deep family connections with friends, is because we often don't have the same expectations that we have on a friend. So we can see them as they are and accept them as they are, where sometimes it's more difficult when you have a lifetime and decades of failed expectations or desires for different behaviors, and it's that we hold these deep resentments of the time that they didn't do this, or why don't they do more of this, or I seem to always have to do this. And I actually had a conversation with a friend this week who is really struggling with connecting with their family and their siblings. And he said, like, why do I always have to be the one that takes the high road? Why do I always have to be the one that is more compassionate and more accepting? And it's like, if it depends on what your goal is, like, because is it unfair? Absolutely. Your family relationships can be exceptionally unfair. But if your desire is connection, if your desire is to have peace with them, then you have to let go of what's fair and your expectations to go, okay, can I accept them as in? And it goes to what you're saying, Betsy, is like, can I love them? Can I truly love their humanness, including the ways that they disappoint, or including the ways that they don't show up in ways I think they should, and can I love them completely as a human, which requires kind of chiseling away at all of these years and years and years of stories that we have to let go of.
Yeah, and sometimes that might mean distance,
Yeah.
and that's okay too, because that can definitely happen, to be able to like know where your boundaries are as well, because it's like, we don't want to enable. It's not like accepting, oh, I'm going to accept this person even though they are deeply critical of me and say horrible things to me all the time. I'm just going to keep loving and accepting this person. It's like, yeah, okay, we can love and accept them for knowing that they're in a pattern, that there's a projection that's coming upon me, and also I'm going to love myself and love them by creating some distance and space.
You can love someone and not like hanging out with them.
Exactly.
And you can definitely love someone from a distance as well.
Yeah.
So, and it's tricky with family because we have these set, like from a very early age, this is what mother means. This is what father, sister, brother, aunts and uncles, like there is a role, and I have a definition for what this role means. And when somebody doesn't meet that definition, we get in our feelings about that. And we don't see them as human beings, we see them as, this role for us. So we have to really, it's tough to kind of unplug from that. And sometimes we have to unplug energetically, physically from that. It's like, okay, this person, this family member is just maybe not good for me, or I'm not good for them. So so just to reiterate what you're saying, Betsy, just boundaries. And that's fine. It's fine to disengage from the bio relations, and so that we can create some space for ourselves to maybe re-meet them down the road with from a different perspective.
I had a really interesting experience with what titles and names mean, and how to deal with that. When we were going through the process, Amy and I, before Asher was born, my bio son that I was a sperm donor for, and then we went through counseling for a year, and the counselor encouraged us not to use the word dad, because I'm not going to be in his life the way many of his peers would have a dad. And so the term dad often means someone who's there every day. And so a dad who's not there can be associated with a deadbeat dad, or someone who abandons them. There's a story of letting, betrayal or of abandonment if I'm called dad, but I'm not there. So they encourage us to use different terminology so that I can show up with full integrity and full love without the old story, even before, even as he's learning what the word means. And so he calls me Bada for bio dad. He's now 4.5, and I'll see him, in a few weeks. But it really speaks to that kind of, well, what is family, and can you create new definitions of what those roles are, and still in a healthy way? And honestly, time will tell. He's 4.5. I mean, in 15 years, I might find out that I've scarred him terribly. But I'm hoping
I hope
that it's
not.
all going well.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, first, just a just amazing, John, that you have committed to being a bio dad and that you are able to procreate and contribute to this young man's life and also this woman, right? In the way that works for you guys. And, that really speaks to this unique time that we're living in where family units are just so different than they used to be. Like, how many children right now in our world are growing up with two homes? So many. I know so many people that are doing co-parenting and these children that are growing up where they are 4 days with mom, 3 days with dad, vice versa, swap, a week here, a week there, and I was really actually contemplating this with a friend of mine who's doing that in the process around the pros and cons and like the ripple effect that that will have on these children. What's that going to do to actually, their older selves? Will that help them to be able to be more adaptable to different environments as they grow? Is that going to be challenging for them? I'm sure it's different for everyone, but it really is a huge part of our world now. I know myself and a lot of other people grew up in, with divorced parents. That's part of the new norm. And so it is really creating a new humanity, new family structures and dynamics.
And I think as it's more normal, I think it has more potential for it to be a healthy option. I think that when the cultural narrative is that divorce is failure, or when there's resentment from between parents that the kids absorb, the divorce is clearly going to have a negative impact on the kids. But as we have more and more examples of healthy co-parenting and supportive co-parenting, then the possibility of it being a healthy way and to create these bonds, I think, is more and more realistic and possible.
Absolutely.
I was talking to a friend recently, and they're doing the co-parenting thing, and he had mentioned that his son came home one day and was like, why don't you and mom like live together? And he was like, oh, it was because like he had the explanation like, well, we get along better when we don't live together, and so on and so forth, and we want to provide a loving home for you. And I think the boy was like 5 or something. He was like, okay, so he got it, but he was still, you could tell there was some sadness there because he knew that so many of his friends were like parents who were together. And then shortly thereafter, he went to visit like one of his friends, and he came home early because there was all this yelling going on with this mom and the mom and dad of his friend, and he didn't want to be around that. And so he's like, yeah, that's why your mom and I don't live together, because that would happen. And so the kid got it. He's like, he got a real world example, like, oh, so you guys would do that if you were living together? He's like, yeah, unfortunately, yeah. He's like, oh, well, I'm glad you guys don't do that. Fantastic. And being able to have that sort of dialogue with with your child is huge. And we're well past the point of like parents being like, we have to stay together for the kids, or like maybe not well past it, but I think there's a lot of people out there realize that the other options are viable options. So, and it's just raising a whole generation of people who are going to be very cool with the idea that I've got, my mom lives here, my dad lives here, or I've got 2 moms and 2 dads, or these are my parents and this is my mom's boyfriend, and this is like, or whatever. And it's all, yeah. So it's the idea of like, there's this big umbrella that family is now able to fit under, and that's a much bigger umbrella than it used to be. And it's just we're just gonna produce like better people, great people, I think, more accepting people. Yeah. So
I'm curious, as you are beginning to create these definitions of family in your life, are these things that you're thinking about, of what are the expectations on you, or are you flooded with worry, concern, or mostly just trying to keep the diaper clean?
kind of all that, kind of all the above. So it reminds me, my partner and I joke about, you ever see that meme with, those candy hearts that have the little sayings on them?
Yeah.
Like, kiss me, this, that, and the other thing that they usually around Valentine's Day. There's that meme with the 2 hearts that's saying like 2 hearts with a little baby heart that's sitting in front of them playing on the floor, and like the big hearts are like committed to not fucking up our child the way that we were fucked up. And then the little baby heart was like, whole new kind of fucked up. whole new brand of fucked up. So we're gonna do our best, but I really feel like, and I've always felt like, people who would make good parents should be parents, which I don't necessarily believe that across the board now, just because it's just there's so many people that shouldn't be parents who are who are parents and are just like contributing to things being more challenging on this world than they should be. So, but with the world being the way it is now, we could stand to have less people on the planet. But for us, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I feel like there's something to be said for being an older parent, because I'm in my 50s now. My partner's in her 40s, and something I've this kind of discovered is, like, you get to be a certain age where you actually start to figure out how the world actually works, how life actually works. Like, I think you get to be, some people get it earlier, but I think a lot of us get it like maybe in our 40s, and it's like, oh, this is how this kind of works here, because there's only so many situations that you can get presented with. It might have a different flavor, but after a while, these situations start to repeat themselves, and it's like, oh, that's how this is going to play out. This is how I should handle that, and you do it perfectly. And it's like, oh, all right, I'm starting to figure out this life thing. Parenting from that place is much better than parenting from, like, if you're 25, for example, and you're still trying to figure it out. If I had a child when I was in my 20s, that guarantee that child would be a mess right now, because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. So there's something to be said for being the older parent. So I'm feeling good about that. And last thing about that is, I feel like we've talked about, like, what we would like this child to be, what we'd like this child to grow up in, and there is so little attachment into what that looks like from both of us. Like, that my only stipulation is almost like, okay, I don't care what path you choose, but we choose a path and commit to that path, which doesn't mean you can't be like this multifaceted creature, but somebody who's like bouncing around from thing to thing to thing. That's my only thing. I would be like, no, if you choose something, I really want you to, after trying a bunch of things on and seeing what feels good, choose a path and stick with that path. The idea of having a child that is like a master at something really appeals to me, whether that's artistic, musician, athletics, whatever. You want to be a drag queen? Fantastic. Be the best drag queen like that you can be. And yes, so I have zero attachment to what that looks like, but I do have an attachment to the commitment. It's like, really, like, you dive into something and be like, put those 10,000 hours in, be a master. That's what that appeals. Everything else, whatever comes with the package. So
I love that. I think that you're so right, that there's something about just the level of self-awareness that you have as you get older, and to be able to bring that into the massive amount of uncertainty of parenting, to be able to address all of that unknown with the wisdom of unknowing, I think allows you to be present in a way that would be just a state of panic, or additional panic, if you were in your 20s, or if I was in my 20s. Oh my God. So I look forward to you turning into a totally aggressive soccer parent, and
yeah, I can see that easily being the case. Maybe in the unbearable soccer dad. Yeah, I can totally see that. So, but I would like to be the unbearable, piano dad who's at the piano recital, like, you crushed it, yeah. So, yeah, so either way, it's all good. So, and I will say that one thing my partner and I are both stoked about is just the community that he has been born into, like with you guys, and like we're part of a fantastic community of friends and family, and Framily, as we call it, where I'm just so stoked that he's going to meet so many awesome people from so many different walks of life and different perspectives, and he's going to be surrounded by these aunts and uncles who are just going to love him up and show him all these fantastic ways of being in the world. He's going to have some fantastic models to model, to some fantastic people to be modeling, and I give thanks for that every day, for sure. So
I love that too.
Absolutely.
So beautiful. We're the soul aunties and uncles.
Indeed.
Well, I love this conversation, especially because here we are, family, our growing family, and just always insightful and sparked. And I think we can start to close it up with some sparks. I've got one brewing. We can jump in with my closing spark.
Please.
It's really it's echoing something that came from this conversation, and I'm really like, wow. Oftentimes, we close up our podcast here and there's like, wow, I feel inspired. We don't even need to share this because this conversation is sparking us. And I'm really sparked by this really deep consideration around acceptance and how powerful that is and how much that contributes to building soul family and community, and also how powerful and healing that can be in our own blood family, whether that is just like you spoke to, Janus, around accepting your mother for the way that you guys were choosing to communicate. There's a level of acceptance that comes from um, how we're going to choose to relate. And so I really want to just highlight that and celebrate that and recognize how it is such a contribution to healthy relationships within friends or family.
I love that. I'm going to jump on that and say that, like, I was really lucky to spend the last few years of my grandpa's life getting to know him quite deeply in a way that I connected with him in a way that I think his children didn't connect with him with, because I think that they had expectations and desires for a father that showed up in a traditional way, and he was really gifted and connected in that of a pastor and of a philosopher, but not as grounded in present, maybe in the ways that they wanted as a dad. And it took a grandson kind of saying, well, what if we let go of what you want and see him for what he is? And then you realize, wow, this is a special being. But it really took a little nudging and a kind of reshaking the expectations to see him in that way. And I think that can be a challenge for all of us in our relationships with our family, is can we let go of what we wish they were and to see them for what they are? And as you said, Betsy, that doesn't mean that we want to hang out with them, but you can even respect someone's, resilience, and you can respect, the way that their strength, even if it's something that repels you in wanting to hang out with them. You can still find a way to go, okay, I see them for as they are. I'm going to love them, and then find a way to connect with them in a way that allows some level of connection and respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Well said. So, and for me, it's just kind of like linking those two with, like the authenticity and the acceptance. And really, we tend to like surround ourselves by like reflections. Like it just happens naturally. So for me, I found that when I show up as my authentic, when I really wanted to show up and endeavored to show up in the world as my authentic self, that's when my family kind of found me. And that's when I kind of found them. I was, struggling well into life, like trying all these clothes and this mask and trying to figure out who I was. And once I finally stopped trying to figure it out and just accepted who I was, I immediately became surrounded by people who are my dearest friends, like that I'm still friends with to this day. And even my bio fam and my sister that I grew up with, we kind of fell apart. It fell away from each other, but there was this acceptance that I feel like I got to, and then she slowly made her way back into my life. And we're still not like super tight, but we are definitely relating to each other on the levels that we hadn't done before. So, and same with my mom as well, my bio mom. So yeah, that really, that showing up as your authentic self definitely will tend to attract your family, whether these are your friends and family or bio family. It's yeah, we tend to be surrounded by these family units when we show up as our authentic self. So that's my closing spark. So keep it real, people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, how can people find you in the world, Janus?
I have a nutritional supplement company called NuWorld Nutritionals, spelled NuWorld Nutritionals, and we have mushroom-based nutritional supplements designed to improve and elevate your state of mind. It helps alleviate symptoms of anxiety, depression, ADHD, even PTSD, and it's helping with all sorts of forms of dementia, Parkinson's, anything neurological. It helps a lot with, and even if it's nothing so serious, I just want to have a good day. I want to have a positive mental attitude today. It's fantastic for that as well. So you can find us online, nuworldnutritionals.com. Use the code SPARKED for 10% off of all of our products.
Awesome. How about you,
Woody
Betsy?
woo.
Woo! Yeah, love it. Yes, you can find me in the world on my website, finklehoo.com. That's my last name, or poweraffirmation.com. I have wonderful offerings to support people with sustainable happiness. So, using mind, body, spirit tools and techniques, also body work, energy work. I do a variety of modalities in person and online. Follow me on the socials, of course. Love to connect with you guys there. And I have a free audio affirmation for you listeners. If you like affirmations, you can find that in the show notes.
Beautiful. And speaking of
Fantastic.
socials, forgot to mention Stay Sparked on the Instagram. Follow us. We're keep following us at Stay Sparked on IG. You can find me at johnstin.com, where it has links to my daily gratitude circles and t-shirts and my YouTube channel, Hug Nation. Also want to mention that I'm doing an in-person weekend workshop, the Love Ambassador Summit, this January 13th and 14th. So you can find details through johnstin.com or pinkpath.net.
All
And
right.
speaking of affirmations, could we close one out with us right now, Betsy?
Yes, of course. You know, I love that. All right, so we can just take a moment, take a nice deep breath. Focusing our thoughts on affirmations can really support an uplifting sense of self and being. So we're going to start with this one that has been my favorite. The more I love and accept myself, the easier it is to get along and connect with others. The more I love and accept myself, the easier it is to connect and get along with others. The more I love and accept myself, the easier it is to connect and get along with others. I have strong connections to others. I am getting stronger and stronger in my relationships to my family and extended communities. I belong. I belong. I belong. I belong. I belong. I belong. And so it is. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being my family, my Framily, friends and family. Much love to you all out there. And I look forward to continuing to receive your love blast. Thank you for listening. We're always open to receive requests as well for topics. So if there's anything that you guys want to hear us talk about, don't hesitate to send us a message.
Stay spark, people.